Have you ever tried to use one of those retirement calculators online and felt your soul leave your body when it told you that you need to save $3 million to retire comfortably? Or maybe you've looked at your retirement account balance and realized that at your current pace, you'll be working until you're 90 years old. Yeah, welcome to the retirement crisis that nobody wants to talk about honestly. And I'm not here to sugarcoat it or tell you that everything will magically work out if you just believe in compound interest hard enough. My name is Roshan, and I spend way too much time analyzing why the retirement dream that was promised to previous generations has become a complete fantasy for most people working today. If you've ever felt like retirement is something that only happens to other people, people who somehow figured out a secret that you missed, make sure to hit that subscribe button because today we're exposing the brutal math and systemic failures that have made retirement impossible for the majority of Americans. Let me start with the most fundamental problem that's destroying retirement security for millions of people. The entire retirement system shifted from pensions to individual responsibility, and most people never got the memo or the resources to handle that shift. Your grandparents didn't need to be investment experts or financial planners. They worked for a company for 30 years, and that company promised them a pension that would pay them a specific amount every month for the rest of their lives. It was simple, predictable, and it worked. But starting in the 1980s, companies started replacing pension plans with 401k accounts. Instead of the company bearing the responsibility and risk of funding your retirement, that burden shifted entirely to you. Now you're responsible for deciding how much to save, where to invest it, how to manage the investments, and how to make it last through retirement. Most people have no training, no expertise, and no time to do this effectively. We basically took the most important financial decision of people's lives and said, good luck, figure it out yourself. Here's what makes this shift so devastating. Pensions were professional managed, pooled investments that could take advantage of economies of scale and professional management. Your individual 401k is just you trying to figure out which mutual funds to pick based on some vague descriptions and past performance charts. You're competing against professional investors and algorithms with your lunch break research. It's like being thrown into the ocean and told to swim to shore while professional swimmers with boats are telling you that anyone can make it if they just try hard enough. The math of what you actually need to save for retirement is absolutely brutal, and I guarantee it's worse than you think. The common rule of thumb is that you need about 80% of your pre-retirement income to maintain your lifestyle in retirement. So if you're earning $60,000 a year before retirement, you'd need about $48,000 a year during retirement. That sounds manageable until you start calculating how much you need to have saved to generate that income. Using the 4% rule, which says you can safely withdraw 4% of your retirement savings each year, you'd need $1.2 million saved to generate that $48,000 annual income. $1.2 million. For someone earning $60,000 a year, that means saving 20 times their annual salary. And that's assuming the 4% rule still works in the future, which many experts now question given longer lifespans and lower expected investment returns. Let's talk about what it would actually take to save $1.2 million over a 40-year career. If you start at age 25 and retire at 65, and your investments earn an average of 7% per year after inflation, you'd need to save about $850 per month every single month for 40 years. That's over $10,000 a year. For someone earning $60,000, that's 17% of their gross income, or about 25% of their take-home pay after taxes. Now, here's the reality check. The median retirement account balance for Americans approaching retirement is nowhere near $1.2 million. Most people have saved a tiny fraction of what they actually need, and it's not because they're lazy or irresponsible. It's because saving 25% of your take-home pay is literally impossible when your rent or mortgage consumes 35% of your income, your student loans take another 10%, your car payment takes 8%, insurance and healthcare take 15%, and you haven't even bought food yet. The assumption that everyone can just save 15% or 20% of their income for retirement completely ignores the financial reality that most people face. It assumes you have that money left over after covering your basic expenses. It assumes you don't have student loan debt, medical bills, or family members depending on you financially. It assumes your income will steadily increase throughout your career, and it assumes you'll never face unemployment, medical emergencies, or other financial setbacks. These are fantasy assumptions that don't match real life for most people. Here's another brutal truth about retirement that financial advisors don't like to emphasize. You're supposed to start saving aggressively for retirement in your 20s to take maximum advantage of compound growth over time, but your 20s are also when you're earning the least money, often paying off student loans and trying to establish yourself financially. It's the worst possible time to save large amounts of money, but it's also the most important time for retirement savings. This timing mismatch sets people up for failure from the start. Let me show you how devastating it is to start late. If you start saving $500 a month at age 25 and earn 7% returns, you'll have about $1.2 million at age 65. But if you wait until age 35 to start, you'll only have about $560,000, less than half as much. Wait until 45 and you'll have only about $240,000. The first 10 years of saving are worth more than the last 20 years combined because of compound growth. But those first 10 years are exactly when people can least afford to save. So what happens? Most people save very little or nothing in their 20s and 30s because they're dealing with student loans, trying to buy a home, starting families, and establishing careers. By the time they're in their 40s and finally have some financial breathing room, they're already so far behind that catching up is nearly impossible. They need to save massive amounts, like 30 or 40% of their income to make up for lost time. But by then, they have kids in college, aging parents to help, and expenses at their peak. The window of opportunity has closed. Let's talk about Social Security, which was supposed to be a safety net, but has become something people are counting on as their primary retirement plan because they don't have anything else. Social Security was designed to supplement retirement savings and pensions, not to be someone's entire retirement income, but for millions of Americans, it's all they'll have. The average Social Security benefit is currently around $1,900 per month. Try living on that. Try paying rent, utilities, food, healthcare, and everything else on $1,900 a month. And here's the terrifying part. Social Security faces funding shortfalls that could reduce benefits in the future. Current projections suggest that without changes, Social Security might only be able to pay about 75 to 80% of promised benefits starting in the 2030s. So that $1,900 monthly benefit could drop to around $1,500. Meanwhile, the cost of living keeps increasing. People who are planning to rely primarily on Social Security are planning for poverty, whether they realize it or not. Healthcare costs represent another massive retirement problem that most people completely underestimate. Medicare doesn't cover everything, and what it doesn't cover can be incredibly expensive. The average couple retiring today will spend over $300,000 on healthcare costs throughout retirement. $300,000. That's separate from your living expenses. That's just medical care, prescriptions, dental work, hearing aids, and long-term care if you need it. Most retirement calculators don't adequately account for healthcare costs because they're so variable and unpredictable. You might be healthy and spend relatively little, or you might develop chronic conditions that require expensive ongoing treatment. You might need long-term care that costs $8,000 or $10,000 per month. Medicare doesn't cover long-term care, and most people can't afford long-term care insurance. So if you need nursing home care for several years, it can completely wipe out whatever retirement savings you manage to accumulate. The longevity problem makes retirement planning even more complicated. People are living longer than ever, which sounds great until you realize it means your retirement savings need to last longer. If you retire at 65 and live to 95, that's 30 years of retirement you need to fund, but you have no idea how long you'll actually live. You might die at 70 and saved way more than you needed, or you might live to 100 and run out of money at 85. There's no way to know, so you either save way more than you might need or risk running out of money while you're still alive. This uncertainty makes retirement planning feel impossible. How much is enough when you don't know how long you'll need it to last? The conservative answer is to save way more than you think you'll need, but that requires sacrificing even more during your working years. The aggressive answer is to save less and hope you die before the money runs out, which is a pretty grim retirement plan. Most people end up somewhere in the middle, saving less than they should while hoping everything works out, which is essentially crossing your fingers and praying. Let's talk about the gig economy and how it's making retirement even more impossible for millions of workers. Traditional employment at least came with the possibility of employer matching contributions to your 401k. Many companies match 3 to 6% of your salary, which is essentially free money toward retirement. But gig workers, contractors, and freelancers don't get employer matches. They don't get any employer benefits at all. They're responsible for everything themselves, and they're also dealing with irregular income and no job security. The shift toward gig work and contract employment means fewer people have access to employer-sponsored retirement plans at all. You can open an IRA on your own, but the contribution limits are lower than 401k plans, and there's no employer match. You're completely on your own. And when your income is irregular and unpredictable, consistently contributing to retirement becomes nearly impossible. You save when you can, but there are months or even years when you can't save anything because all your money goes to immediate survival. The housing crisis has created another barrier to retirement security that's often overlooked. Previous generations could buy homes, pay off their mortgages by retirement, and then live relatively cheaply with no housing payment in retirement. Housing costs dropped dramatically in retirement, freeing up money for other expenses. But millions of people today will never own homes. They'll rent their entire lives, which means they'll have full housing costs in retirement with no ability to reduce that expense. If you're paying $1,500 a month in rent during your working years, you'll likely still be paying that or more in retirement because rents keep increasing. That $1,900 Social Security check doesn't go very far when $1,500 of it goes to rent. Home ownership used to be a retirement planning tool that reduced expenses in retirement. Renting permanently eliminates that advantage and makes retirement significantly more expensive. Student loan debt has created a generation of people who started their careers tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. When you're paying $500 or $1,000 a month on student loans throughout your 20s, 30s, and even into your 40s, you're not saving for retirement. That money that should be compounding in retirement accounts is instead going to pay off educational debt with interest. By the time the loans are finally paid off, you've lost decades of potential investment growth. The math is devastating. Someone who starts saving for retirement at 25 versus someone who starts at 40 after finally paying off student loans will have massively different outcomes even if they save the same amounts. The 15-year delay costs hundreds of thousands of dollars and lost compound growth. Student loan debt has essentially stolen retirement security from an entire generation. They were told they needed college degrees to succeed, took on debt to get those degrees, and now are discovering that the debt prevents them from ever achieving financial security.